Hi, Anna, Megan, Brandon, Jennifer. Thanks for hanging on. Siddharth. Thanks for hanging on for a few moments while I got my act together. Appreciate it.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for
Um,
hosting.
yeah, for sure, for sure. So, I think I see some new faces here. I've been recruiting now, I guess by way of quick introduction. I've been recruiting now since 2013. In a former career, former life, I was in software product development, product management. In a former life, I was in mechanical engineering. And so I've had a bit of a varied career. Somehow I became a recruiter. I'm still recruiting to this day, although I think there's going to be a lot of changes in recruiting, which we're already seeing. I was part of the Never Search Alone community over the past year and a half or so. I moderated two job search councils, which have all moved on and found their next opportunities. And I use this as a way to give back and to maintain some sort of contact with the Never Search Alone community. I'm not formally endorsed by the Never Search Alone community, but I'm part of the community. And every now and then I'll drop in this link to the Coffee with a Recruiter. I started this because I get a lot of folks that reach out to me one on one, and I just I'm one person. I can't scale to address all those one on one requests for actual coffee or virtual coffees. So that's why I do this and to try to get back. So that's my quick thing here. I This is largely unstructured, so it's sort of AMA, ask me anything. Uh so um so yeah, whatever questions. My goal is to give some insight and some perspective into the recruiting mentality and the black box that is that recruiting process, with the hope that a little bit of information will help you navigate your search, or at least help you temper your expectations when it comes to getting ghosted or whatnot, right? So and in turn, that'll help you manage your emotions in this emotional roller coaster that is your job search journey. Okay, that's all I got. What do you guys got for me?
Oh, I can go. Um,
Anna.
Hey guys. My name is Anna. I was at Adobe for the last 8 years as a global program manager of release and acquisition enablement, which means that I was managing the programs to support product releases and do internal training for employees. But I
By the way,
have,
Anna, can I sorry to interrupt you?
yeah,
Do you know Dylan?
which Dylan?
Okay, never mind.
No,
No,
that kind of rings a bell.
no, never mind. Because if you did know Dylan, you would say, yeah, he's my husband. But no.
No, definitely not.
Okay, never mind. Sorry.
Uh, no. But so I have since gotten a master's in biotechnology, and I'm looking to transition into program management and strategy and operations in biotech. Um, and so I, but I haven't interacted with recruiters since working at Adobe, and I've been at Adobe for 8 years. And so I feel like it's a whole new landscape. So I guess um, you're the second recruiter who I've talked to. Um, where do they live? How do I talk to them? How do I position myself with recruiters?
Yeah, that's sort of the age-old question. So the way I like to put this, and I've answered this before, and this is an important question because people ask this all the time. The thing with recruiters is like, um, you have to do this push pull kind of thing, right? Like you want to be position yourself such that recruiters will find you, right? And that'll happen if you it's sort of like a marketing thing, right? Like you tailor your LinkedIn profile to be fairly specialized, right? In alignment with your candidate market fit, and such that when a recruiter looks at your profile, it's like, okay, I need to talk to Anna, right? Like, so so that's one. And the other thing is like sort of doing outbound. So like identifying the recruiters that you should develop relationships with, right? So there's two sort of angles. Raising the flag that is your LinkedIn profile such that the right recruiters will find you. The other piece is actually sort of tailoring a motion to go out and find the recruiters that you feel would be beneficial to helping you navigate your search. So in order to do that, what I recommend is, recruiters come in all kinds of different size, shapes, flavors, right? And so there's several things that I would consider is geography, right? Because a lot of recruiters tend to work in certain geographies and have networks in certain geographies or regions. Sort of, I guess, industry, right? A lot of recruiters tend to orient themselves around certain industries, oil and gas, tech, startups, whatever, finance, right? Um, I would also look at like they also orient themselves around function, right? Some recruiters only recruit CTOs for oil and gas. I don't know, right? Like, so I would look at function as well as sort of industry. And then I would also look at kind of maybe seniority as well. Ideally, you're talking with somebody that's a little bit more seasoned, that's been around the block. Because again, recruiters come in all shapes and sizes. Because to become a recruiter, it's not that difficult. The barriers to entry are quite low, right? If you know how to talk on a phone, host a Zoom call, right? Like you could be a recruiter, right? So the barriers to entry are pretty low. Um, what else? So once you've identified, and then also like the types of companies that you might be interested in, that might go hand in hand with the kind of industry and the kinds of roles, right? But if there's certain kinds of companies that you're interested in, you want to make sure that the recruiter is sort of positioned, or maybe if there's a high probability that they'd be recruiting on those kinds of roles. The other thing is that recruiters are, you could largely fit them into two buckets. Either they're internal recruiters or they're external recruiters, right? Internal recruiters, they work almost pretty exclusively for the company that they're working for. So Adobe has internal recruiters, for example, right? But they do have relationships with external recruiters that are usually engaged for specialized needs, right? Sometimes hiring ebbs and flows, and there's surges in hiring, and sometimes the internal team's capacity can't handle that, and so sometimes they'll go out to third-party recruiters, external recruiters, to help manage those ebbs and flows. Or there might be like a specialized search that requires a specific, maybe some sort of technical search that maybe beyond the experience or skill set of the internal team, and they'll go and retain or solicit the help of an external firm, right? So there's any number of cases where they would solicit the help of third party external recruiters. Um, and so, if you're trying to develop relationships with them, I would try to identify first and foremost the right recruiters to just narrow your set, and then reach out to them in a way that is maybe you're priming them a little bit by commenting on their social media posts or their LinkedIn posts, right? And maybe and leading with value, right? So I'm a recruiter and I get a lot of inbound in terms of people wanting to, I mentioned this when you first jumped on, like wanting to grab coffee with me or jump on a 30-minute phone call. And like if I took every one of those, it'd be difficult for me to just get my own job done, right? So like how do you get their attention, and how do you get some time with them? You have to kind of lead with value. And to lead with value, you have to understand what's valuable to recruiters, right? And what's valuable to recruiters, let's just start with external recruiters. External recruiters are often they value having a network of talent that is relevant specifically to the searches that they're either doing or will be doing, right? What's also valuable to recruiters, especially if they're more senior, is potentially soliciting new business, right? So either additional recs with existing clients or new logos, new clients altogether, right? So that's important to them, especially if they're a full desk recruiter where they're on the hook for developing new business, new logos, new requisitions, and they're responsible for filling those positions, right? So part of it is sizing up who the recruiter is. Are they are they internal, external? Are they full desk? Again, full desk is they're soliciting the business, the new requisitions, and they're filling it, right? Are they, are they more senior, or are they just starting, right? If they're just starting, they might not be necessarily recruiters. They might be what you call sourcers, right? So sourcers are like maybe the sales equivalent of SDRs. They're just building top of the funnel, right? They're just sort of appointment setting. They're sourcing on LinkedIn, building a list of potential candidates. They're reaching out to them and they're trying to get them interviews with maybe their their recruiter at their firm, right? Um, I'll stop there on a like I don't know if this is helpful.
No, I think this is great. I think what that's making me think about is, as a program manager, um, I guess I would have to think about like how I can bring value to a recruiter. I mean, I can't really tell them like I'll come and program manage your recruiting for you. So I, yeah, there's not like a specific asset that I can deliver. Like if I were a PMM or something, that would be a little bit different. I could have a
Yeah.
portfolio, but here,
You know, and when I say lead with value, it doesn't have to be something giant, right? Like even I don't know, a witty or informative comment on a post that I post, that's value, right? Value doesn't have to be like, oh, here's a lead for a new client. That would be awesome, right? Like that's huge. But like it could
Mhm.
just be, something that's micro value, right? Because here's the thing. If you're doing something that's different than what most people do, that's what stands out. Because a lot of people don't lead with value. They lead with asking, "Hey, can you jump on a 15-minute, 20-minute call with me? Hey, do
Mhm.
you have any leads that you can give me? I'm looking for this kind of, hey, can you look at my resume?" So they're not leading with value, they're leading with an ask, and you guys have been, I'm sure you guys been in this position too, right? Like even if it's just somebody knocking on your door trying to sell you something, right? Like oftentimes they lead with an ask. Hey, can I have 10 minutes of your time to look at this brochure or whatever? Can I sell you some pest control, right? So yeah. Um,
Thank you.
yeah. Any other questions around that, Anna or anyone else?
Hey Eric, good to see you, man.
Hey, Brandon, how are you?
Hey, good, good. Hey, one question maybe is beyond recruiter, but I'm curious in your experience, um, how clear is a company's hiring decision process, right? So you have hiring manager, you have a cross-functional team, you have
Yeah.
a leadership, and then you have a scorecard in ATS.
Yeah.
But let's say you go through all these interviews and candidates, like how do they actually make decisions? Right.
Oh God, that's a great question. So, okay, it depends, and I know that's not the best answer. It depends, right? But it really depends on the client, right? And this is not something that this is a question that you can consider asking the recruiter or whoever your point of contact is while you're going through the process or even early on. Like, who are the decision makers in this process? What does that process look like, right? Because a lot of times it varies, right? Sometimes it's by committee. Sometimes companies have very methodical scorecards that they fill out religiously. On the other end of the spectrum, sometimes it's just a gut feel, right? You have a good conversation, you hit it off with the hiring manager. I like you.
Crazy,
Let's
right?
get you. When can you start, right? So it really depends, right? It really, really, really depends. And so I think the important thing is to get an understanding of what that process might look like early on so you
Yeah,
can kind of orient yourself around it to navigate it effectively, right?
yeah,
So let's say they have a pretty methodical scorecard, right? You want to kind of understand, and a lot of times if they're methodical about it, a lot of times that scorecard will be, well, like the job description will be a derivative of that scorecard or vice versa, right? Like a lot of times they're spelling out what they're looking for, and a lot of times the scorecard that they create will be again derived from that job description. But you still want to confirm that, right? Because that's not always the case. So, understanding what they're looking for, understanding what their process looks like in terms of how they arrive at a decision, because usually in my experience has been primarily with earlier stage startups, which again, there's a whole spectrum of processes, and that's part of our value add. We come in and try to normalize that operationalize that a little bit, but yeah, that's definitely something I would ask early on to get a sense of, because it could be by committee, there could be one decision maker, oftentimes a hiring manager, but a lot of times the hiring manager will, through the interview process, what the hiring manager is looking for, apart from information, right? They're looking for information from the interviewers who are typically part of the team. But they're also looking for buy-in, right? So if the team members are comfortable with this person, like there's no veto, right? Then the hiring manager feels confident, based on the information that, okay, let's extend an offer to Brandon, right? Like, so, but again, all this depends. It really depends.
Yeah, that's tricky. Um, how often I've seen, I work in product management for the rest of the team. So oftentimes there for product management hiring process is that per stage. So you talk with hiring manager, each stakeholder, but per stage they'll assess your qualification
Yeah.
for the next round,
Yeah.
which is good because if you don't qualify, you don't go forward. But there are other times you go through like four different stages with a case study, and there's no decision until maybe that's when the committee actually kicks in and say, oh, okay, we interviewed 10 candidates, which five goes forward after 5 rounds interviews. Um, how do
Yeah.
you like, is there like a standard way of per stage decision making or committee stage sort of decision making? Is this something we can tease out from the recruiter
Totally.
session?
You should. You should. So in my experience, most of the processes that I've implemented or supported has been sort of like a stage gating, right?
Right.
It's not like here's the process, first interview to hire or offer. Usually there's stages, and across those stages, there's an evaluation and a pass, no pass, or go, no go, right? It's not like they spent, the candidate runs through the entire process collecting all
Right.
this information, and at the end, it's only at the end that they evaluate. I've not seen that for a thorough process. I've always seen some level of stage and gating, right?
Mm,
And so the first stage typically is a call with the recruiter,
yeah.
right? And usually it's a either like what they call like a screening call. So and then they'll gate there, right? Sometimes recruiters have like some latitude with submitting candidates, right?
Mm,
Or moving them forward. They might move candidates forward with some reservations. Obviously, recruiters do have veto, right? If somebody comes into an interview and they're just completely unprofessional, right? The recruiter has latitude to be like, okay, no. Like I don't need to ask anybody or have anybody else look at this person. My answer is no, and I'm just going to remove them from consideration, right?
mm,
So like in this again, this raises a good point. Like when you're dealing with recruiters, use like ask them about the process. Like
mm,
really ask them about the process. Like, how are decisions made? And
mm,
obviously, that's tough sometimes, because sometimes they just leave like 5 minutes for you to ask questions. But to the extent that you can be focused in those 5 minutes about getting what you need for that moment, I think would benefit, anybody in their search.
yeah. Just to understand a little bit more on the tactical side of recruiting. So, I think the stage level decision making makes sense. I've definitely gone through interview experience that was the case. But curious that, let's say if you recruiting, you feed the pipeline like 10 candidates, right? But let's say one candidate is a superstar that made to 4 stages, and
Yeah.
the other 8 or 9 probably got Ken on the second stage. Now you only have two candidates really deep in the funnel, but then I guess as a recruiter, you got to have to, feed the top of the funnel with new candidates. How do you manage
That
that?
depends too. That depends too.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's typical, right? So what ends up happening, I think, Brandon, what you're alluding to is, how do candidates flow through the pipeline? So what ends up usually, okay, let's say I post a job description, and let's just say I'm relying purely on inbound, which right now is actually kind of common because there's a lot of folks that are getting that if you put a job posting out there, you get a lot of inbound, a lot of noise, but you get a lot of inbound too, right? So let's just assume that I post a job, I'm getting a bunch of inbound. Let's say in the first, I don't know, few days, I will wait for folks to start coming in, and then maybe after a few days, I'll go back and look at my pipeline. Great, I have, I don't know, 100 applicants, right? Or maybe more. I'll start going to those 100. I'll pick out the folks that I'm interested in, right? Or I'll start removing folks that are no's, and I'll start sort of whittling down a funnel eventually to folks that I want to talk to, right? And then once I talk to them and interview them, then I'll submit them and I'll start to build a cohort, right? So typically a cohort for us is anywhere from 3 to 5 folks, and then we'll start to work that cohort through the process. Now, obviously, those people we start working through the process, they're not all going to get offers, right? They're going to get, whittled down. And so maybe at the end, maybe there's one offer or 2 offers, right? But as folks are moving through that funnel, depending on how many openings they have and how many folks are in that funnel, maybe there's only one opening. And so knowing what I have to know about how many people, what the hiring urgency is, what the timeline is, I might have to spin up another cohort,
Mm,
right? And sometimes this does happen where it's like, okay, there's folks that are far along, but now it's whittled down to one.
yeah.
So let's get another cohort spun up and let's accelerate them. Let's slow these guys down and get the cohort sort of in the same phase, right? In the same step. So that kind of happens, right? With the end goal of having maybe 2 or 3 folks that are high consideration that we would extend offers to. And then the mindset is like, okay, let's extend an offer to Brandon. He's our leader in the cohort. A lot of times they won't tell you, Brandon, you're the leader in our cohort. They won't tell you that directly.
Mm,
You can ask, and you might be able to get some insights and sort of deduce that you are the leader in the cohort, right? And that's valuable information. It's also valuable information for you to know if there is a cohort, because you
right.
might be the only one in that cohort that's standing, and that gives you leverage to know that.
Yeah.
And which, by the way, the recruiters oftentimes won't tell you that. They won't tell you that, right? Oh, we only have one in our cohort, and if you don't accept, I'm going to have to spin up another cohort that's going to take me a month or 3 weeks to work through, right? They're not going to tell you that, but you can
Yeah.
infer it based on your conversations with them sometimes, right? So an astute recruiter won't tell you that directly.
Mm,
So, so yeah, a lot of times we're building cohorts. Knowing how many openings there are is valuable, right? Knowing what their funnel looks like. And one way you can help a recruiter too is by asking some of these questions and framing it in a way where it might benefit them, right?
mm,
Oh, how many openings do you have for this position? Because I have a lot of people in my network that
mm.
are, that are strong, that may be a strong consideration for this. So if you have like 3 openings for this position, I might be able to help you with your funnel with some referrals, right? So you can kind of drop that. So if you could frame your questions around, maybe being able to help them build their funnel or their cohorts, they might share more information with you.
Sure. Knowing this funnel process, would you say it's generally it's always good to, the faster you go through the interview process is always better for you? Or is there like a counter case you can think about? That's
Yeah,
like,
there's totally counter case. I've had situations where people zoom through the initial stages, but they are the guinea pig.
yeah.
So the company, the hiring manager, the team has never hired for this role before. But guess what? Brandon looks great. So he moves through all these interviews.
Mm,
And here's the thing. When you've never hired for a particular position before and you start talking to the talent market, to all these candidates, there's like you learn a lot. You learn a lot about what the market will bear. It's kind of like, I don't know, just a stupid example. If you're looking for a plumber and you've never hired a plumber before, you don't know anything about plumbing. All you know is that your toilet is messed up, right? And you start getting on the phone and you start talking to plumbers, you're going to start to learn a lot. Start asking you questions and you start telling them about the situation. They'll start making some recommendations. But after you start talking to like 3, 4, 5 plumbers, you're going to know a lot more about what to look for in a plumber. So same case with recruiting. Like if they're looking for a whatever senior software engineer, they never hired a senior software engineer before. They've never hired, or they have very limited experience. But let's say you hit it off with them. I don't know if Brandon, if you're a senior software engineer, you said a product management. Like they've never hired a product manager before, right? As they start interviewing more product managers, you're going to start learning more. So what might end up happening is like because you're the first person that they think was the strongest, you might move through the process fast. But as they're talking to other people, they'll be like, oh, the requirements might start evolving as a function of the conversations that they're having with the talent market. So you might be here in limbo at the end stage, and you might be like, oh, well, there's no offer yet. Like, what's going on? What's going on a lot of times is that they're still talking to other people and they're getting a lot of information about that might revise what it is they're looking for. Because sometimes they're like, oh, should we hire a junior or a mid-level product manager or somebody that's been 10, 15 years in product management? Sometimes they don't even know that, right? Like, are we going to hire a junior product manager to complement the CEO who's already doing product management? Or are we going to look for a senior product manager that, you know, sometimes the CEO doesn't like that because they want to still have their hands in product, right? So it just really depends. But I hope that helps, Brandon.
Here, can I ask a quick, I know we're past time. Can I ask a quick question about, and Brandon kind of touched on it, case studies and other material you might be producing for an interview?
Yeah.
Is it assumed that anything that we produce becomes the property of the company that we're interviewing with, or is there any way that we can put protections in place for proposal for our creative output that we generate for interviews to put up some sort of guardrails that it remains ours, and if they choose to use it, it's they have to
That's a
compensate for us.
that's a
They have
great
to compensate
question.
us for our ideas.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know the answer to that question. You might chat GPT it.
Okay.
I know that I know that you have to be careful because there's some companies out there, or maybe more unscrupulous teams that will just they'll do that in sort of a non-ethical way to just develop ideas and insights, with limited interest, or
Mm-hmm.
probability and really working you through the interview process, So you have to be careful with that. I would be careful about, how much time you're dedicating and at which stage you're doing that in the interview process, right? If, for example, like you wouldn't be super vested in spending a lot of time after just one recruiting call, right? But if you've invested and they've invested, I'm just throwing this out there, 5 or 10 hours of interview or meeting time, and maybe doing a 30-minute assessment or project or something like that is reasonable. But for a recruiter to ask you on the first step, hey, will you spend an hour doing this project for us? That's either a poorly designed interview process and a poor candidate experience, or maybe there's something else sort of unscrupulous going on there. I don't know.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
In the past, I've attached not documents, but I'll attach some sort of copy saying that this is my idea for use with this interview only, not to be used for business purposes. So at least I try to put something in writing, but I didn't know if there was anything, if it had any teeth, or if there was anything more
I think that's the thing, right?
rigorous
Like
to do. Because I don't
if,
want
if
to come
it,
across as being a weirdo, but I also don't want to be taken advantage of.
yeah, yeah. I mean, the thing with ideas too, like if it's legitimate work, like you're actually coding something up and they can actually use that code, in their, I don't know, in their production systems, like
Mm-hmm.
that's like a different thing. But if it's just like, a bit of a research that maybe Perplexity could probably do 90% of, and to put that, I mean, I wouldn't see that as offensive. But again, like from practical purposes, right? Like what you can do in 30 minutes or an hour, I don't know will have any meaning material value to them other than evaluating you as any candidate. And even if it did, like you'd have to go through some sort of litigation, which is just kind of, what I mean? I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
the answer to that. From a recruiter's
Okay.
perspective, I don't see people doing that. Like let's say if you did like a little project or a little research, or you came up with some recommendations about go to market or whatever, like I haven't seen people do that in terms of what you're referring to, like putting some protections in place or something. I
Yeah.
haven't seen people do that.
Okay, I'm in the marketing space, and so I've been asked to like put together multi-channel, multi-step
Mm, yeah,
programs and campaigns with like
yeah.
KPI. I mean, kind of like built out, definitely requiring more than 30 minutes. So totally hear what you're saying about like give us a quick and dirty 30-minute analysis of this. It probably just depends how they ask.
Yeah. And
And
also, I mean, again,
how sketchy I feel about the recruiter to be like the
right,
process to begin with.
right, right. And like, again, it's like, where are they, at what stage are they asking this of you? If they're
Mhm.
asking this of you in the very beginning where they've invested like little to no time on their part, it feels a little bit sketchy. Again, maybe it's just a poorly designed interview process or
Sure.
candidate experience. Like it's off. It's
Yeah.
off.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right. Hope this is helpful, you guys. I try to do this every week, so tell a friend. I enjoy the questions and sharing just my perspective, what I might know that might benefit. And I hope all is going well with you guys. And thanks for the engagement.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Eric.
Thank
This was
you.
great.
All right. Thank you.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye
Bye.
bye.